as you can see, today we are going to discuss about the topic atoms. So before we actually start this topic, we should know why we are going to discuss about this particular topic. So we are going back to a few years wherein Robert Boyles, as you know, we have learned about Robert Boyles. He had made some experiments using air. His experiment was he observed what happens to air when it is expanding and compressing. What he noticed was, see, we can easily compress the air to any volume. So if it is getting compressed, so what does that mean? It is occupying very less space. So that can be compressed to a very small volume. This was a breakthrough in science. So from this, after few centuries, there was a development and it was found out that there is a fundamental particle or basic unit for every matter. We know that the matter is of three different types: solids, liquids and gases. For any matter, there should be a fundamental quantity, and that quantity was called as atom. So that was first explained about by John Dalton. So let us see. According to John Dalton, matter consists of atom which may be same in a particular element and it is different for different elements. So if you are taking a particular element and investigating about the atoms that are there inside it, we find that all resemble each other. So if we study one particular atom, so we are making a whole picture of the complete element. So it will be easy to study the complete characteristics of a element if we study the character of a particular atom. It will be same for particular element and different for different elements. And he also said that the atom cannot be further subdivided, and that is the most fundamental particle that was believed till that time. Later on, after some years, J.J. Thomson has discovered a negatively charged particle, and that is called as electron. But the atom as a whole is neutral. So how can this be possible? The atom is neutral, but there is some other particle called electron which is negatively charged. So what he assumed is that the atom as a whole is a sphere, a positively charged sphere in which the electrons are being embedded. So that is why his model of atom is called a plum pudding model, wherein the electrons are placed as plum over this particular atom which is the positive sphere. In that way, he concluded that the atom becomes neutral by placing the positive charges all over its surface and the electrons being embedded in between. But there was a problem, and that was found out by Rutherford. He said that the positive charges were not uniformly distributed in the sphere. Thomson also could not prove that the presence of discrete spectral lines emitted by hydrogen atom. So another thing that he could not explain was that how there is large angle scattering happening in the metal foil. This was the beginning of another discovery by Rutherford and his colleagues. So they did the alpha particle scattering experiment. Rutherford along with his students Geiger and Marsden, they have done an experiment which is using the alpha particle. So what is alpha particle? Alpha particle is a helium atom from which two electrons are taken away or they are removed. So basically what is helium? This is the second element in the periodic table. And so what will be the number of electrons that is existing there? 2 electrons. So if you are removing the 2 electrons, what will happen to the charge of the helium then? If you are removing the 2 electrons, the charge will be 2e, or you can say simply it is plus 2e. And what will be the mass of this alpha particle? It will be 4 times the mass of proton. These are the 2 important things that you have to remember, that the charge of a alpha particle is plus 2e and its mass is 4 times the mass of proton. So we'll see what is the actual experimental setup. See here, there is a source of alpha particle that is being placed inside the lead box, and the alpha particles will be emitted in this direction, and it will be hitting the gold foil which is placed here, and after that it will get scattered and it will be detected on this screen that is placed all around. There is some essential condition for this experiment to take place. So that is, we are supplying it with these alpha particles are being supplied with an energy of 5.5 mega electron volt, and they are collimated into a narrow beam. Assume that we have a normal torchlight and a laser beam. What is the difference between the two? The normal torchlight will scatter the light, whereas the laser beam, it will be traveling only in one particular direction. That is the same case that is happening here. When the alpha particles are emitted from the source, here the source is a radioactive material which is a isotope of bismuth, and the particles will be emitted in all the directions. So to make it move only in a particular direction, we are placing some obstacles, and that is the reason why we are saying that it is being collimated into a narrow beam. Next important thing is that we are using a gold foil. Why should we be using a gold foil which is very expensive? There is a reason. See, look at the thickness of the gold foil that we are using. It is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 7 meters. So how can we compress a particular material to this dimension? It is very difficult. So if you try to compress or apply some pressure and reduce its size, what happens is there may be a damage or it may break. But the special property of gold is that it is very ductile. So that can hold that much pressure and there will not be any change in its shape. It can be brought to the dimension as said here. Next thing is, we are using this screen. This is made up of zinc sulfide. What happens is, when the alpha particles, after hitting this particular foil, they will be scattered and they will be falling on the screen, and when it is falling on the screen, it will be scintillating. It will show bright spots. That is the reason why we are using zinc sulfide. So let us look at the main setup. See here, we have the source of alpha particles. They will be collimated into a narrow beam by using the lead bricks. Later on, the particles will be moving in the forward direction and they will be hitting the gold foil which is placed here. After their interaction with the gold foil, what happens to the alpha particles? They may be moving in different directions. So what is happening? Most of the particle is being moving in the same direction. Only a few particles are changing their direction because of some hindrance that is taking place. That is being recorded on the zinc screen, which will be showing bright spots, and that can be observed by using a microscope being placed just behind the screen. What are the observations that we can see from this particular experiment? Most of the alpha particles pass through the gold foil. See, suppose you are there are 8,000 alpha particles. Assume that the number of alpha particles is 8,000. So more than 7,000 of them will be passing undeflected. Next, some of the alpha particles were deflected through small angles. So how can a deflection take place in this particular experiment? The deflection may be taking place because there is some entity that is inside the gold foil. Only because of that there can be a change in the direction of the alpha particles. Also, it was detected that a few particles were deflected through large angles, that is greater than 90 degrees. Some of them came exactly in the opposite direction and some retraced their path. See, actually they are moving in this direction, and what happens to them? They will be coming in the same direction. So from this, what they have plotted a graph at a particular instant of time. What is this graph? We are taking scattering angle theta along the x-axis and we are seeing the number of particles along the y-axis. If you observe the graph, see the angle theta 0 to 20, the number of particles being observed is of the order of 10 to the power of 7. Whereas if you are coming to the extent of 160 and 180, the theta value is 160 and 180, the number of particles are very small in number. What does this mean? Most of the particles are moving without any change in its path. So why are we not getting a reading near 180? What is the reason for that? See, just look at the figure here. We cannot completely close this screen. So some part is open for the alpha particles to move towards the screen. So that is the reason why we are not getting the value near 180. From this we made some conclusions. What are the conclusions? Most of the space in an atom is empty because most of the particles were moving undeflected. They were going in the same direction as it was in the beginning, and the deflection in the path is due to some positively charged region. How can we say this one? We already know that the alpha particle is a positively charged particle, and there can be deflection only if there is a similar positive charge somewhere around the gold foil. Only similar charges can repel, otherwise it would have attracted. So the deflection has taken place because of the presence of some positively charged region inside the gold foil. The retracing of the alpha particles is due to Coulomb's repulsive force. This is also strong evidence proving that there is some positive or similar charge like the alpha particle in the gold foil. Motion of alpha particle is not affected by the electron because the electron is a very light particle. The mass of the alpha particles is very much high when compared to the mass of the electron. The significance of this experiment. What is the significance? This was experiment which was done by Rutherford and his colleagues. It has made a evidence supporting the Rutherford's atomic model. It led to the discovery of nucleus. So as we have seen, he proposed that there is some positively charged particle which is obstructing the path of the alpha particle, and later on it was termed as the nucleus. That is why Rutherford is given the honor of discovering the particle nucleus. It helped to determine the size of the nucleus. This experiment also gave a complete picture about how to determine the size of the nucleus, that we will be seeing in the next topic. Before that, what is the meaning of this one? Distance of closest approach. See, assume that there is an alpha particle and here is the nucleus, target nucleus, and this alpha particle is moving towards the nucleus. So if it is moving towards the nucleus, as you know, this nucleus and the alpha particle both are positively charged. When they are coming in the same direction, same straight line, there may be collision, head-on collision, and hence there will be a minimum distance up to which only then they can reach, because as they are both positively charged, there will be a repulsive force as they are coming closer, and that closest distance is called the distance of closest approach. Closest approach can be defined as the minimum distance up to which an energetic alpha particle traveling towards the nucleus can move before it comes to rest and retrace its path. That is what is the distance of closest approach. So how can we calculate this distance of closest approach? In order to calculate that, let us assume that we are projecting this alpha particle towards the nucleus, target nucleus, with an energy that is capital E. So if it is moving, so what kind of energy will it be having? It will be having kinetic energy, and as it is approaching, coming closer to the target nucleus, what is happening? Its kinetic energy will be getting reduced, and finally what happens? It will be coming to rest at some point. Assume that it is coming to rest at a point. It is denoted by R0. So initially it is having a energy of E, which is totally kinetic, and it is coming to rest at some point. So according to the conservation of energy, what should happen? This particular kinetic energy should be completely converted to potential energy at this particular point R0. Here, so kinetic energy is equal to the potential energy of the charges. So potential energy, as you know, the expression for potential energy is K Q1 Q2 by R0. Here Q1 is the charge of the alpha particle, Q2 is the charge of the target nuclei, R0 is the distance between the target nuclei and the upcoming alpha particle. Here the term K, which is a constant, is 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0. Its value is 9 into 10 power 9. We know the value of V. We know the energy that we are supplying to the alpha particle. K is a constant quantity, and Q1, Q2, we know the values. The only unknown here is R0, and it can be calculated easily. This is how we can calculate the size of the nuclei. So the distance of closest approach of the alpha particle making head-on collision is considered as the size or the radius of the nuclei. So this particular experiment also gave a clear picture about how to determine the size of the nuclei. If you are closely observing about the trajectory of the alpha particle, see, it will be looking like this. See, the particles which are coming closer to the target nuclei, they will be moving and retracing their path. As the distance is increasing from the target nuclei, what happens is they will be getting a small displacement, or they will be deflected in the direction. Initially they will be coming in a straight path, but after reaching the target nuclei they will be deflected in some other path, whereas the particles which are away from the target nuclei, they will be going undeflected. Here, see, you can see a term B, which is called the impact parameter. What is impact parameter? What is impact? So because of the target nuclei, there is some variation in the path of the alpha particle. It is creating some impact on the path of the alpha particle, and that is what is called the impact parameter. The perpendicular distance of the initial velocity vector of alpha particle from the center of the nucleus is called the impact parameter. See, observe that this particular alpha particle is moving towards the nucleus. So this is the initial velocity vector of the alpha particle, and if you are observing it, the distance from the center of the nuclei to the initial velocity vector of the alpha particle, then that distance is called the impact parameter. So for a particle which is coming head on with the target nuclei, what would be the impact parameter? It will be 0 because it is coming in line with the target nuclei. See, another important thing to be seen here is that there is an angle theta. So that angle theta, what does that give us? It is the scattering angle. It is the angle made by the initial vector with the deflected vector. So this angle gives the angle of scattering, or the amount of scattering that has taken place in the alpha particles. Rutherford also gave a relation between the impact parameter B and the scattering angle theta. It is related by B is equal to Z E square cot theta by 2 by 4 pi epsilon 0 E, where B is the impact parameter, E is the kinetic energy that we are supplying, and theta is the angle of scattering. All these quantities are, if you are maintaining the energy as a constant value, all these terms will be constant. Only variation will be in B and theta. So different particles will be having different angles of scattering. Assume that the particle is moving in this direction, in the line of the nuclei. So what will be the value of B? It will be 0. So if B is 0, neither of these terms can be 0. So cot theta by 2 should be 0. So cot theta by 2 will be 0 only when theta by 2 is 90 degree, or the angle cot is 90. So theta by 2 is equal to 90, and so theta will be equal to 180. So what does that mean? A particle which is moving along the line will be retracing its path, or it will be moving at an angle of 180 in the initial path which it was traveling initially. So this was a good coincidence, or it helped him to make a good relation between the impact parameter and the scattering angle. It also supported all the postulates that he has put in this experiment. So from this we will be coming to know about the postulates that were developed by Rutherford. So what did he conclude? Almost all the mass of an atom is concentrated at the center. That if we take an atom, almost all the mass is concentrated at the center, and that was called as the nuclei. Size of the nucleus is very small when compared to that of the atom. So the size of the nucleus is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 15 meter, whereas the size of the atom is around 10 to the power of minus 10. And next, the negatively charged particles revolve around the nucleus with Coulomb's force of attraction. This is something similar to the planetary motion or the solar system. Here the particles, or the negatively charged particles, which are called the electrons, revolve around the nucleus, like the sun and the planets. The planets will be revolving around the sun. Similarly, here the negatively charged particles will be revolving around the nuclei. The only difference is that there the planets are revolving because of a bound force, that is the gravitational force, whereas the force that is acting here is because of the Coulomb's force of attraction, because the nucleus is a positive charge, the electrons are negatively charged particles, and hence there will be a mutual attraction of the two. The number of electrons is equal to the number of positive charges in the nuclei. So what is the number of electron? The similar number of protons will be there in the nuclei. So that is the important thing. So his model is analogous to the solar system because of the way he predicted the atomic model. similar to the solar system, so it is called the planetary model. So these are the references of this particular topic. You can go through these books for more understanding of the topic. So now we have learned that the atom is not the ultimate basic unit particle. There are also subatomic particles inside the atom. So my question now is, can the electron and nucleus be subdivided further? So you have to find out.